Alright guys, future me here, putting in a little insert into the beginning of this episode of the first episode of this podcast. At the beginning of the podcast, I do talk about how I have a video version of this available up on YouTube that would actually just like have actual video like me sitting in the chair, but I kind of figured that that wasn't really necessary. I did kind of state in the beginning that I understand some people like to have the video aspect, even if they're not doing anything. It's just something to kind of look at. But I've decided I'm going to take out the video portion of this entirely. I'm just going to have the audio, but I am still going to put it up on YouTube. I'm just going to have kind of the, as far as the video for YouTube goes, I'm just going to display the, kind of the thumbnail that I used for the video on YouTube, and then just display that as the video. I don't know if that makes sense. But, I think you guys get what I'm saying. I'm basically, you guys are going to be looking at the static thumbnail image of the podcast. Instead of me just sitting in the chair talking, I'm going to take out the video portion, and I'm just going to use the thumbnail as the static image for the podcast here on YouTube. And then, of course, it'll be on all the other platforms. So ignore what I say in the beginning of this podcast about having like an actual video portion or whatever. It'll still be on YouTube, just without actual video. So just ignore me, and then let's just go ahead and... otherwise, everything else I said is correct. This is going to be an unedited podcast, other than this little insert I'm putting here. Unedited, so you get what you get, basically. But let's go ahead and just get to the main... Let's get to the meat and potatoes. Alright, everybody, what's going on? How you all doing? This is going to be the start of my... I guess kind of sort of podcast, where basically what I want to do is each episode I want to talk about a particular movie or video game or something or other. And I kind of want to talk about it long form, because I do have opinions about movies and TV shows, video games, and stuff like that. But I'm not very good at putting them in a very structured review. So I would kind of just like to do something where I just sit down and talk about it, give my general opinions, and I kind of talk about everything without having to worry about being, or without having to worry about getting it in a video that's under a certain time limit, or just feels concise and straight to the point. I want to just do something where I can sit back, relax, and kind of talk about something. So I decided to start this kind of sort of podcast. I don't exactly want to call it a podcast, because I don't feel like it exactly fits under that branch, but this is very much going to be just me sitting in a chair, talking about a movie or video game, and it's not going to be edited. It's going to be pretty long form. I'm going to go until I am basically finished saying what I feel like I need to say, and that's about it. There should be a video version of this up on YouTube if you guys want to watch the video, even though it's not going to be that interesting. It's just going to be me sitting my ass in front of a camera talking. I'm not really going to be, like I said, I'm not going to do any editing on this. I'm just going to be sitting in front of the camera talking. It's going to be unedited, right off the cuff, or raw. So the video version probably isn't going to be for most people, although maybe some people just want something on in the background, or maybe they just like something to look at. I'm kind of that person. I just kind of like, even if they're not doing anything in a podcast, I do like to have a video component to it. Just, it gives me something to look at, I guess, because I really don't like listening to a podcast and doing something else, because then I get distracted, or then I'm just not really paying attention to the podcast, and then it's like, what's the point, you know? But I will also have just the audio versions of this on other platforms. It'll probably just start off on one platform, and it should make its way to other platforms as time goes on. You should see some links in the description, hopefully, if I remember. I usually don't really put anything in the description, so the chances of me not remembering are pretty high. Anyway, like I said, this is going to be unedited, off the cuff, so anything that is wrong with me, you are going to hear here. So like if my nose is a little stuffy, or I have really bad allergies, usually in a video I will just kind of wait till they're gone to do it or whatever. But here at this podcast, like right now I got a little bit of the sniffles, just been a little cold, so my nose is a little stuffy. So you guys, if you guys hear that, I apologize. But basically, Yeah, it's gonna be raw, so anything that is wrong with me, you guys are gonna hear, you guys are gonna see if you're watching the video version, and that's about it. But one of the things the movie that I wanted to start off this, I guess, quote unquote podcast with, is actually Inception. Everybody knows Inception. A lot of people consider it Christopher Nolan's kind of magnum opus, his best movie. I don't think it is. However, I did watch this recently because the last time I watched this movie was around the time it came out, which I think was 2010. And I do have my laptop here, so I can do some looking up of things or whatever. So if you're watching the video version of this, if you're seeing me look down, it's because I have the laptop here. But I do want to talk about Inception because I did recently rewatch it. Like I said, haven't really watched this since it came out, and I watched it around the time that it came out, and I just did not care for it. It was not a movie that I could really get into. I honestly couldn't even really tell you why. It just, the concept didn't really do much for me. Just at the time when I watched the movie, I did not care for it. And as time went on, this movie came to be like some people's like absolute favorite Christopher Nolan movie, one of their favorite movies of all time. A lot of people compare Christopher Nolan's movies since Inception to Inception, and I saw this at Walmart not too long ago. It had like a collectible slip on it, and I thought, you know what, I should probably watch that movie again. And this was around the time that I believe Tenet came out on Blu-ray, because I loved that movie. I loved Tenet. It was just one of those movies that I saw and it clicked with me so well. I'm sure everybody has a movie like that, but Tenet really clicked with me. I just loved that movie so much. But I did pick this movie up because I thought I should watch it again. And I just watched it the other day. Finally got to it. And I've gone from not really caring about this movie to actually liking it quite a bit. I still don't think it's one of Christopher Nolan's best movies. I think Interstellar, Tenet, and The Prestige are all better movies. But I do like this movie. It's definitely grown on me a lot. The biggest thing I think with this movie that people seem to enjoy, I think the concept of the movie, the dream concept going into people's dreams and stuff like that. I think that main concept a lot of people like. I think it's one of their favorite, or probably their favorite aspect of the movie, because it is a pretty interesting concept. But personally, for me, I find that to be one of the weakest parts of this movie. I don't really care too much for the... I really don't care too much for the dream segment of the story. Or the Inception stuff, going within dreams, or within a dream within a dream within a dream, whatever. That concept doesn't really interest me that much, and I think it's probably because I kind of got the I was exposed to that concept pretty early on. I don't know if it's ever been confirmed, but it seems like a big inspiration for Inception was the movie Paprika, which is an anime movie, which is absolutely fantastic. I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you watch it. But that movie kind of got me into the idea a little bit sooner than Inception did. And just by the time I got to Inception, the concept didn't really do much for me. However, what I do like about Inception and its main concept is the background and lore information that goes with it. One of the things I really like about the movie is that they don't just say, okay, here's a main concept, here's this dream within a dream thing, and then they just do that. There's a lot of other information that goes along with that concept, especially like when it seems like to some extent the world, or at least some people in the know, I guess, know about this, this technology to go into people's dreams. They do say it was used for military applications at one point. They never really address if that knowledge has been made to the wider population. However, there's a point where Leonardo DiCaprio goes to Michael Caine and they kind of talk about how Michael Caine was kind of the one that kind of taught Leonardo DiCaprio this stuff. So that makes me believe that, to some extent anyway, the some people, maybe it's just the intelligence community or just whatever, seem to know about this technology. And when Leonardo DiCaprio and team go into Cillian Murphy's character's dreams, who I forget his character's name in the show, Fisher. When they go into Fisher's mind, and they realize, and they start getting attacked by a mercenary group, and they realize that he has had some training to have his mind kind of subconsciously defend itself. I thought that was a really cool idea, and the way that Tom Hardy in the movie kind of explains that is really, it's kind of blunt, but it really paints the picture of what's going on. Like, I was really surprised at the fact that this guy had been, at some point in his life, had been trained to defend himself subconsciously for something exactly like this. And I thought that was super freaking interesting. And especially, another thing I really liked about that was the, now I'm going to call, this is going to be a little hard. I'm probably going to get canceled for this. There's a person in this movie who at the time was a woman, and at the time went by Ellen Page. At the time went by that name. I am going to refer to... This is going to be hard. Okay, there was an actor in this movie, at the time, was a her, and her name was Ellen Page, but is now, apparently, a boy, or a man, and goes by the name Elliot Page. I am going to refer to this person as Ellen Page, and I'm going to refer to him as a her in this movie because at the time this movie was made, he was still a she, and his name was still Ellen Page. So basically, I'm going to refer to Ellen Page as Ellen Page. Was her name Ellen Page before? I can't remember. Like, I can't even, like, probably look that shit up now, because I probably just scrubbed it from the internet. Whatever, don't care. But I'm going to refer to her as a her, and use Ellen Page, because that is who she was at the time of this movie. Okay? So, just to get that out of the way, I don't want to get mixed up in all these fucking pronouns and shit. I'm going to call her a her, and use her female name, because at the time this movie was being made, she was still a woman. So, I am going to use that. I'm going to use that name, and I'm going to use those pronouns. So, there's a point in the movie, getting back to my original point, there's a point in the movie where Leonardo DiCaprio is recruiting Ellen Page's character, and she my nose is a little itchy today, if you just my allergies, I guess, but if you see me doing this, it's I'm itching my nose for video viewers. But when Leonardo DiCaprio is recruiting Ellen Page, and later in the conversation when they're kind of walking down this bridge or whatever, or even a little, I think it happens even a little bit earlier, where all the so they're in, I guess they're technically in, I'm trying to remember the events perfectly, like, I've only seen this movie twice, so I believe they're in Ellen Page's mind, and there's like, or no, they're in, fuck, I can't remember exactly now, but whatever, they're in this dream-like state or whatever, and then I guess it's actually they're in Ellen Page's mind, and the world that Ellen Page has created in her mind is being populated by Leonardo DiCaprio's subconscious. And as she starts changing things in the world, the subconscious people, like the fake people that Leonardo DiCaprio's mind populated the world with start looking at her when she starts changing the infrastructure, like when she bends the place in half or whatever, and everything starts exploding. They all start looking at her like that. I thought was a really kind of little detail, like a really interesting detail as well. Just how like the mind kind of knows or starts to learn that, hey, something's not right here, and then it attacks it, kind of like what did Leonardo DiCaprio say, like white blood cells to an infection or something like that. So I thought that was really interesting. I really enjoy the amount of thought and effort that went into the background information for the movie, and the acting as well was absolutely fantastic. Like such great acting. I do think the kind of weakest actor in this movie actually did turn out to be Ellen Page in this case, because her character doesn't really do anything other than the portion of the movie where Leonardo DiCaprio is trying to basically recruit her and teach her the ropes and everything. She never really does anything. And the weird thing is, like, she doesn't really do anything, but they make her out to be really important. Then she doesn't do anything for a huge span of time, and then at the end of the movie, she just comes up with this idea to basically come up with a way to, fix the fuck up that they're in. And that's basically it. Like, her character doesn't really do anything. Oh, as I hiccup, doesn't really do anything after that. Doesn't really do anything throughout the whole span of the movie. She's more of like just a character reacting to shit that's going on. But all the other characters I really like. Like, Cillian Murphy's character, he is what he is. He doesn't really need to be. He does a really good job with the role, but he's just there to serve a purpose. But like all the main characters, like I'm not a huge Leonardo DiCaprio fan. I really don't care for him, but I do like the aspect of the film that I like, that I think uses the characters very well for the most part, is the kind of this group of thieves, but they all have their own kind of specialty. I really like that concept, and I think that's why I like shows like Lupin the Third so much, where you have Lupin, who's kind of the master thief, Goemon, who's the samurai, Jigen, who's kind of like the guns expert. And there was a show, I think it was on TNT, like a few years ago, called Leverage, and it was just a group of like thieves that kind of they kind of stole for a good reason, but like they had the mastermind, they had the muscle, they had the hacker, they had the grifter, like they had all these characters, and I really like that concept. I like having a group of people who have their own skills and personalities, and that's what this movie does. So like Leonardo DiCaprio is kind of just a smart one, comes up with a plan, he knows kind of how everything works. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is kind of like the I'm guessing is kind of like the military guy, or he knows how to use weapons, stuff like that. Tom Hardy, who's this kind of smart master of disguise sort of thing or whatever. He knows how to, impersonate people and stuff like that. And I guess he also kind of gathers intelligence. And then Ellen Page ends up becoming the architect, where she creates the worlds that they're going into or whatever. So I really liked all the characters. I thought Ken Watanabe did a fantastic job in this movie, and he is fantastic. I love him as an actor. He's great. And then even the guy that got to do the make the sedatives or whatever, I thought he was really good. I don't really know if I've seen him in anything else before, but he did a really good job, and I really liked him as well. Especially since he didn't have a huge role in the movie. He kind of they introduced him, and he had a little bit of stuff to say when they introduced him, and then he had a little bit of light during the when he was getting chased in the dream in the van or whatever, but then he was left pretty much voiceless throughout the rest of the movie, when once he reverses off the bridge or whatever. But really loved all the acting. I don't really know if there's anything I really need to say about the special effects in this movie, because they are fantastic, along with the cinematography is just fantastic. Like I said, when Ellen Page kind of just bends the world in half, and when all the stuff starts exploding around them while they're at the cafe or whatever, I thought was, man, it was such a, like, the special effects in this movie are so good. Especially when you get to see at the end of the movie the world that Leonardo DiCaprio and his wife, Marion Cotillard, I guess is her name. When you see the world that they created, it's kind of like falling apart, and all the buildings are just crumbling. Like, really cool, just imagery and stuff like that. I do have to say, the aspects of the movie that, I guess the aspect of the movie that I hated the most was probably everything to do with Leonardo DiCaprio's wife. I thought that was kind of like, I don't know, maybe 90% of it I hated, and then 10% of it I liked. Because I pretty much hated everything about it, because I felt like she was completely pointless, and I felt like it was a device used to make Leonardo DiCaprio kind of like a haunted character. He's just haunted by his past, and he, can't really get past it. And it's good as a reason to give him something to work towards, to do this last job, to be able to go back to the States. But really, just like every time she came into the screen, and it's not that she was a bad actor, I just didn't like the character that she was playing. I didn't like what was written for her character. It was just so annoying. She was more of a hindrance to my patience than a hindrance to bring along some sort of climax to the story of the movie. And I didn't like her character. I did like the concept, though, that she didn't really know, or she didn't really think anyway, that she was in the real world. And again, this goes back to, I guess, just how well the main concept of this movie is thought out, and how much background and lore they kind of really put into it. I really liked the idea that she didn't really think she was in, like, the real world anymore, and she couldn't really tell it apart. I thought that was a really cool concept, and the fact that it leads to her death, spoilers, I guess, but the fact that it does pretty much lead to her death can be pretty, like, I can understand why that concept would hurt Leonardo DiCaprio, like, kind of scar him, give him that haunted past that they wanted, but they could have just left it at that. They didn't have to keep bringing her back, in the dream sequences, and just have her be annoying or whatever. Like, they didn't need all that. She was more annoying than anything else. They could have just left it at, oh, she killed herself because she couldn't tell reality apart from the dream or whatever. That would have been perfectly fine. And I would have been just fine at that. I also have to give the movie some real credit. This movie is... It says when I look it up on Google that it's 2 hours and 42 minutes. I don't think that's right. Unless there's a director's cut of the movie that I'm not aware of. I think the version of the movie that I watched was like 2 hours and 20 minutes. So Google is saying there's an extra 20 minutes of the movie, but I'm pretty sure, almost 100% positive, that the movie was 2 hours and 20 minutes. But regardless, that's still a pretty long movie. But I have to say that it fucking flew by. Like, one thing that the movie does really well is, for the most part, the dialogue is great, and even the comedy moments in the show that they wrote into the movie were also quite good as well. It's kind of like, especially like when Leonardo DiCaprio goes to see Tom Hardy for the first time in the movie. Like, that whole situation, that whole just conversation with Tom Hardy was hilarious. I really like how they put kind of the more comedic moments in the dialogue and didn't really need to show it. That was really nice. But the dialogue is really good, and even when there's nothing exactly happening in the even when there's nothing happening with the there's no action or anything, there's no real fast progression of the story or anything like that. When it's just the characters talking, it's super freaking interesting. So this movie flies by because either A, there's something going on, or two, the characters are just talking, And both of those are really interesting in this movie. So the 2 hours and 20 minutes just fucking flies by, just because the action that is there is so good, and the dialogue that is there is so well written and oftentimes funny that I can't. I It's just throughout the whole time, like, I was surprised. Like, when I was watching the movie, I paused it at one point, and I paused it at one point, I think, to go to the bathroom or something like that. And when I paused it, a bar came up that showed how far I was into the movie, and it said an hour and a half. And I was like, "Fuck, man! I feel like I started this movie like 20 minutes ago." Like, such a well-paced movie, and I was like, I was really surprised. Just like, because oftentimes if it's a over 2 hour movie, sometimes I can get to feeling those 2 hours, but in this movie, I didn't feel it at all. I was honestly kind of surprised when it was over, because I was just like, fuck, man, I could have watched another hour, but I'm glad it didn't, because otherwise it probably would have been drug out at that point. Because even by the end of this movie, I thought it tied up really nicely. I felt like, again, the pacing was just so good that I felt like the story and the writing and the pacing just all kind of came together very nicely. The ending of the movie kind of came to what felt like a natural close, and I felt it fit perfectly, honestly. Trying to think of anything else that I really want to talk about in this movie. I don't know why my goddamn nose is so itchy. Let's see. What else was interesting about this movie? I don't think there's really anything else I want to talk about. This is probably going to be a pretty short podcast episode or anything like that, and especially being the first one, that's perfectly fine. Let's see. I guess the other thing I want to talk about is the ending. I did not care. I really didn't care for the ending, unfortunately. And I'm talking about the ending that everybody felt like they needed to talk about. Was he in a dream? Was he not in a dream? When he spins the thing on the table, which actually is another thing I could really talk about with the movie, just real quick, about how well the background lore stuff was. I really liked the concept of them having I believe they called it a totem, which was kind of a specialized item to them that enabled them to tell whether they were in reality or not. Leonardo DiCaprio having the little top. Joseph Gordon-Levitt had a loaded die. And we see Ellen Page, her character, makes a chess piece. Although I don't really know exactly what her totem is supposed to do, because it shows her like drilling a hole in it or something like that, and then she puts it on the table and she tips it over, and of course it tips over. If you push a chess piece over, it's gonna tip over. So I don't know what she did to the chess piece to, like, I don't know. She was drilling a hole in it, so was she hollowing it out? Did it tip over easier, or what? I don't know. That was kind of, I don't know. That was weird to me. I didn't quite understand it. I kind of figured maybe she would do something that would, like, I don't know. It would kind of be like one of those. They have those cups that no matter how much you tap them, they just don't spill. I figure maybe she would do something like that. She would kind of put some sort of weight or counterbalance or something into the chess piece, so that if you kind of went to hit it, it would kind of tip like over, but then like turn back upright. But they never really showed her doing anything like that, so I don't know if the basic concept is that in the dream, if you try to tip over the piece, it just doesn't tip at all. Or if it tips, it does go back, and if it stays knocked over, then you're in reality. I don't know. I thought that part was a little confusing. They didn't expound on that very much, and they never explored it any further after that. They never even showed the chess piece after that. But I thought the whole idea of a totem was really interesting. But at the end of the movie, when he is finally at, I guess, his house, or what it is, maybe the grandparents' house, because I know the kids were staying with the grandmother or whatever when they had the phone call earlier in the movie. But when they were at his house, and he sets his luggage down or whatever, and he spins the top on the table, and doesn't even wait to doesn't even wait to like see if it topples over or anything. He just goes straight to his kids, which I mean, I get. Most people would probably do that. He hadn't seen his kids in a while. He had been working so hard to get back to his kids, but I don't know, man. I feel like he probably should have kind of stayed there to make sure that it toppled over again, like to make sure he'd been working so hard towards all this. Like, you think that motherfucker would want to check to make sure that it's real. Or maybe they're kind of saying at this point that, he doesn't care if it's real, he's just reunited with his kids. But then it's like, well, then what's the fucking point? If it's not real, what's the point? You could have just fucking stayed in the dream the entire fucking time, but you didn't. You could have, after you ran from the cops or whatever, you could have just gone straight to, some motel somewhere in Transylvania and fucking just got into the dream. And I guess then you could say that his wife would fucking like intervene or whatever, but it's like she wanted him to stay there anyway, so what was the point? So you think Leonardo DiCaprio's character would want to make sure if it tips over or not. And I really don't like this ending scene here. I think it was done on purpose. I think it was done specifically to get people talking. I think it almost feels like it was something that was tacked on near the ending writing process of the movie. And Christopher Nolan was like, man, I want to fucking like shove a scene in there to get people talking or whatever. I think he wanted people to have the same kind of conversation that you could have about a movie like The Prestige, because he threw some, toss and turns in that movie. But I feel like it was just thrown in there to get people talking because, at least from me watching the movie, it seems pretty obvious that he's not in a dream. And again, this is probably going to spark a whole bit of conversation with people in the comments, if people even listen or watch this. I just feel like people will argue about this, and I feel like they have. I remember seeing these conversations on the internet, but I just don't... I don't know. To me, it seems relatively obvious that he's not in a dream. And I know that movie ends with the top still spinning, but I mean, to me, it seems like it was, because it could, for those tops, like if you spin one of them, like it can take a little bit for it to drop, and then by the time the movie ends, the top looks like it's wobbling a little bit. It looks like it could, you give it another 30 seconds to a minute, it could probably tip over. But I don't know. I really did not like that scene. I felt it was unnecessary. I thought it was tacked on. The only argument that I could see that could possibly go towards the argument that it is a dream is it seems like they have that flight attendant. I think that the blonde. I think she was a blonde, but that flight attendant that was there when they jacked in for the last act of the movie, when they all jacked into Cillian Murphy's dream or whatever, or Ellen Page's dream, because I guess she's the architect or whatever. But when they go into her mind, you see that they're on the plane, and they have a stewardess, kind of just stewardess, flight attendant, whatever. And they have her kind of press the button on the machine, and she's right there. It seems like her character, in and of itself, is some weird plot hole, unless there's something I'm missing. Like I said, I've only seen this movie twice now, but it really seems like her character is a plot hole, because she pushes the thing for them to go into the dream, and then we cut into them being in the dream or whatever. But then later on, it shows that she is, later on when Joseph Gordon-Levitt is by himself and he's floating around the hallways and shit, and he's tying all of them together, the flight attendant is, I'm almost positive about this, is in that pile of people that he tied up. Presumably saying that the flight attendant who pressed the button for them to go into the dream is also in the dream with them. However, then at that case, if she did end up being jacked into the dream as well. They never showed her getting hooked up into the machine, from what I remember. And she's the one that pressed the button, so as soon as she pressed the button, she would have fucking passed out and fell to the floor. She probably could have hit her fucking head. So that would be the only way that she could be in the dream, but I'm almost 100% positive about this, that she is in the pile of bodies that Joseph Gordon-Levitt is kind of tying together so he can drag them across, not drag them, but float them across the hallway into the elevator. So she's there, insinuating that she's in the dream, but then as soon as they're all done, like as soon as the movie's getting into the part where he saves Ken Watanabe or whatever, and from Limbo, I think is what it was called or whatever, when he's an old man and he saves them and then they wake up back in the plane, the flight attendant, who I don't know if they ever specifically, I don't think they show her face in this particular scene, but they show a flight attendant coming through and offering them, what was it, like a towel or something like that, and she talks to, like, it shows her walking in with the towels, but wouldn't she be waking up with everybody else? She wouldn't have woken up earlier to go and get the towels or whatever, but it shows a flight attendant walking in giving them towels or something like that, and then that would, to me, that would kind of show that and she kind of talks to, like, Leonardo DiCaprio and them like they're regular people, but obviously she was working with them because she pressed the button. So, but she talks to them like regular people at that part of the scene, so it seems like she doesn't know who they are, so that could still hint that she is kind of, or that they are still in a dream, but I don't think that, I don't know, that's a little bit of a stretch, because it seems like all of that is a little bit of a plot hole, because she pressed the button, it didn't seem like she was jacked into the dream machine or whatever, but she was in the group of people that Joseph Gordon-Levitt tied up and took to the elevator. I don't know, just a weird kind of what seems to be a plot hole. Again, unless I missed something in the movie or whatever, there could have been something that I just missed or didn't understand or just completely glossed over. But otherwise, I just didn't like the ending. I thought the ending was a little forced, little dumb. Just, they wanted you to talk about something that didn't really need to be talked about. But otherwise, I quite like this movie. This movie is a good movie. The concept, like I said, I wasn't in love with it, but I like the writing and the background and the lore that goes along with it. I love the acting, the special effects and cinematography are great. I didn't like Leonardo DiCaprio's wife in the movie. I thought she was really annoying for most of the movie. And I felt like how that whole thing got resolved was, while it revealed something interesting and something important, I don't think, I still don't think she needed to be there. Yeah, but I think that's about all I have to say about, Inception. I'm a little distracted here because I look down at my laptop and then I see a gnat. I got his ass. Ha! Motherfucker. Anyway, I think that's about all I have to say about Inception. This is about a 40-minute podcast, I guess. And that works for me. I don't think they need to be any longer than an hour in most cases. Especially when it's just me talking. I'm not talking to anybody else. I'm not engaging in a conversation with somebody else. But, yeah, I really quite like Inception. It was a good movie. I would definitely probably put it in the top half of Christopher Nolan's films. I haven't seen all of his films just yet, but in terms of the movies that I have seen of his, I would probably put Inception in the better top half of the films. Like I said, I still like Interstellar more, Tenet more, The Prestige more. I have seen Dunkirk, but while that movie was good, and it was very well made and just overall just a good movie, it wasn't anything like, I don't know, it wasn't anything mind-blowing. It was just more like a really well-made, it was just more like just a well-made film. It didn't seem like anything too special or anything like that. So I would definitely say Inception. Inception is better than Dunkirk, I think. But yeah, Inception is pretty good. I went from just not really caring about this movie to thinking this movie is pretty damn good. I'm glad that I gave it a second watch. It definitely deserves love. I don't think the amount of love that other people want to. I don't think it deserves the amount of love and like, oh, this is the greatest movie ever that a lot of other people seem to want to give this movie. But it is definitely good. If I was gonna rate it, and again, I don't know about rating movies. Sometimes I, oftentimes, can go back and forth depending on what day you ask me. But I could probably give Inception like a B or a B plus. It is a really good film, and I really like it. And it's one of the very few films with Leonardo DiCaprio that I can honestly like watch for the most part and not be annoyed. Because Leonardo DiCaprio is another one of those. Is just one of those actors that everybody seems to love, but I just don't care for. Really, this movie and I think The Revenant are the only movies that he's in that I can really stand. I don't know. It's weird. I'm gonna get a drink here. But yeah, really glad I watched this movie again. It was super. It is pretty good, and I feel like the rewatchability for this movie is pretty good as well. Because especially if it's a movie, I don't think this movie is all that confusing, other than if people want to argue the ending or whatever. But for the most part, I don't think this movie is that confusing. I don't think this movie is meant to be really thought-provoking in and of itself, except for the ending. But if this is a movie where people miss some details, I think they could easily watch this movie a second or a third time, get the details that they missed, but still have a really good time with this movie, because it is just a really fun movie to watch. And just, like I said, with a great pacing, with a great writing, the movie, every time you watch it, will feel like it just flies by. It is quite a good movie. I'm glad I gave it a second chance, even though it's been... Fuck, when did this movie come out? 2010? So it's been like... God, we're like 11 years after this movie came out, and I finally give it a second watch. But I'm glad I did, man. Really good movie. But thank you all so much for listening to this podcast. I hope you all enjoyed. And of course, if you are on the YouTube version of this, feel free to put some comments in the comment section, engage in a conversation, and tell me what you thought about Inception and all that stuff. And hopefully in the description, if you are on YouTube, if you would rather hear this on other platforms, the links should be in the description of the video. And that's about all I have to say. I don't know. I actually think the next, in terms of doing the podcast, I don't know how often I'm going to do it. Ideally, I would like to do it about maybe once a week. Maybe I'll do it more than that on some occasions or whatever, but for the most part, I think once a week sounds more or less doable. I'm not going to stick to a schedule because, life is just hectic, so I can't really go out of my way to make sure, like, oh, I'm going to upload the podcast every Sunday. I don't really have the ability to do that. So, I'm going to try to do one about once a week, though. I'm just going to record them and then upload the podcasts whenever I can, but I'm going to try to do them about a week, like one a week or something like that, and talk about many different things: movies, video games, TV shows. I probably won't do music in the podcast because I don't think I could really do a podcast of any decent length talking about a certain album or something like that. Just because when it comes to music, like, what the hell am I supposed to say? It sounds good, but whatever. But that's what I'm thinking right now, and I think I like just keeping it, kind of unedited, kind of raw. Just me sitting here talking about movies, and whatever happens. And that's it. I think next week, or in the next podcast or whatever, I will be... I think I'm going to be talking about a video game. There's a video game that I did beat that I do want to talk about because I have some thoughts on it, and I thought it was really good. So I would like to talk about that. So if you guys don't care about video games, you'll probably want to skip next week's episode. But there will definitely be most definitely, more movies than video games. And I'm going to try to mix it up. I don't want to do like, since this is basically a movie channel, I don't want to do, like 5 video games in a row and then do a movie. I will definitely do more movies than video games, and if I do have a few video games that I want to talk about, I will definitely spread them around. I will probably do, like a movie, a video game, video game, and then do a few movies in a row or something like that. So, and I know this isn't I probably should have said this at the beginning of the podcast, but I don't have I'm not doing this with an amazing setup. I am just sitting here in my chair talking into the camera that I use to film my basic videos. So it's not like it's probably not going to sound like, podcast quality or anything like that, super bassy, high quality audio or anything like that. It's going to be the exact same audio that is in my videos because I'm basically recording the podcast the same way. Maybe if anything, if the podcast really, I don't want to say takes off because I don't think it ever will, but if the podcast ever warrants me kind of putting more focus on it, because right now I'm just doing the podcast because I want to talk about things in just a nice laid back manner. But if the podcast ever becomes like more of a main focus, people seem to like it and they want more of it, and it ever becomes more of a main focus, I would definitely put more into getting more equipment, making the audio better, whatever. But I feel like this audio quality is fine, especially for me just sitting here talking. But just as it is right now, it's fine. But if it ever people want more podcasts, they like the podcast, then I will definitely get some better equipment. Actually make like a little podcast setup or whatever. But I think that is all I have to say for this first episode of what I'm basically just going to be calling the Fanatical Viewing Podcast. Just name it after the channel. Seems very simple. It took me forever to come up with my channel name, so I wasn't going to even try to come up with a different name for the podcast. I'm just not that creative. So, yeah, that's going to be it for the first episode of the Fanatical Viewing Podcast. I hope you all enjoyed. Again, if you're on the video version of this on YouTube, you can see all the stuff in the description box, hopefully, if I don't forget. And I hope you all enjoyed. And again, be sure to tell me in the comments what you think of Inception and where you think it ranks amongst the filmography of Christopher Nolan. But thank you all so much for tuning in to this first episode of the podcast. Thank you all so much. And tell me if you guys like the podcast and all that. But thank you all so much for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.